My presentation today is on John Mbiti, often known as the father of modern African theology. Born in Kenya on November 30th, 1931, he began his studies in Kenya, addressing the modern theology of African cultures, moving to America to get his degree in theology before taking his doctorate in 1963 at the University of Cambridge. He was a pastor in the Anglican Church and taught theology and religion at Makerere University in Uganda, where he taught for many years. After that, he served as the Ecumenical Institute Bossy at the World Council of Churches, where he brought representation to many of those African traditional religions on a global scale, as well as a lot of other smaller ones that didn't get the global representation they often needed. He recently passed on October 6, 2019 in Switzerland, and personal religious beliefs. Being ordained an Anglican priest of the Church of England, his theological views came not from that of an African traditional religion, but said more of a Western Christianity. And this highlights his own open-mindedness as he was furthering research and knowledge for a religion not even his own, but sought to bring understanding to the African religion and culture as a whole, to make it seem, to bring it to light to people's eyes what it truly was, and it wasn't something primitive. He served as a parish minister in both England and Bergdorf, Switzerland, where he served and taught. Theological ideas. These first two quotes both address the idea that God in the Bible is the same as God in the traditional African religion. The God described in the Bible is none other than the God who is already known in the framework of our traditional African religiosity. This was a primary focus of Mbiti's as he sought to take on the misconceptions and often prejudice held against the African religions by Western culture, as they viewed it as anti-Christ, anti-Christian, and even of the devil, when truly they aren't so different, and they view God in very similar ways. Not always, and as he addressed, they're not entirely similar at all. They're very different in their own respective ways, but that God has a lot of similarities with it too, and they're not so different. In an interview in the 1980s, in the midst of a theological discussion, if God was dead, he gave this short answer on Africa's belief in God, saying, for us in Africa, God is not dead. He drew that, like, he never really didn't know much of African theology because he never had a class on it, so he took it upon himself to study the many beliefs of 300 different African peoples or tribes. And, in his studies, he found that it is similar. He found a God similar to that in Western culture, and that it just isn't recorded in the same way. It's more of a living form through word, ritual, and other acts of faith and religion. When we identify the God of the Bible as the same God who is known through African religion, we must also take it that God has had a historical relationship with African peoples. And he's taking on the idea that God doesn't only exist in the way the Bible describes in Israel, that God would have the same interactions with people in Africa, and that's where their religion derives from, and that's where their experiences and personal belief comes from. And this kind of goes back to the earlier point. This is the last quote where he talks about, this is from the New York Times in an article in an interview. He took on these horrible characterizations of African religion and how they were so wrong, and they attacked African religion when truly they were something that is very, very real and very, like, they were very mature in the way they had matured in the way they were built, and they were built on strong foundations, were truly their own religion and something not primitive or old, but something modern as they were growing. His first book, African Religions and Philosophy, is considered his most famous and influential book, sparking a new train of thought in regards to African religion and culture, and gaining a new appreciation for it. And in this, he sought to bring to light real African traditional religion in his study of what they really were and what they were like, and how the similarities between that of Western culture and the God that they worshipped. And a key quote in that is, wherever the African is, there is religion, which is the idea that, like, the African religion is something like alive, and that the African religion doesn't lie in a book, but it lies in the people, and that the African people are the religion. Their religion is built upon the people, and that it is passed through, and the knowledge is passed through generations. John Mbiti's impact is more than it could ever be expressed in regards to the African theology and the train of thought he created to allow for a new train of thought to allow the world to view the African religion and traditional religions of Africa in a very different way, in a way that takes them as more modern and real and something we can respect and understand. That they aren't, and he took on these ideas that they were anti-Christian or of the devil by telling people what they were really about and like exploring what African traditional religion really was. So he spread awareness and knowledge of these African religions, allowing for greater understanding. He truly just sought for people to understand and relate and to be more accepting of those African religions and cultures, and he truly did an amazing job at that. These are my citations.